Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Disability Landscape. I'm your host, Charlie Brose. With me today, per usual, is my co-host, Mark Knutson. Mark, what do we got going on today?
Well, today is I'm going to really enjoy this interview because the individual I'm about to introduce you to, I met through doing stand-up comedy. I go around pre-COVID and would do open mics and comedy shows, and he was a comic that also does the same type of thing. So we got to know one another through that, and I did not know about this history that he had just shared with me a while back, where he was he was not, well, he's diagnosed, he's got Asperger's, but he was in the shelter workshop arena and doing that, but he was able to go beyond that on his own and becoming and having jobs of any
So he got out into the real world.
Yes, he got out of the real world and that. So with that, let me introduce our guest, Alex Jaffe. Alex, welcome.
And my apologies that you have to actually be in the real world.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, this is great in that. So I guess kind of just can you explain? Well, I did mention Asperger's.
Yes.
Is there other disabilities that at least for you, they're hidden disabilities?
Yeah, for
Is
sure.
there other disabilities that you have?
Yes, I have Asperger's, which is now known as like autism spectrum disorder.
Sure.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes, because I don't know, the DSM-5, that's how they classify it. I also have ADD. And if you want to count it, obesity. But then that was already I've been taking care of that, as well.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, because you've lost how many pounds?
About 170. I'm
Yes.
down right now.
Wow.
So I went from about here to about here. I still need to get to about here, but it's a process.
Yeah, because when we would do our comedy, you don't see all the same comics every time. So you go do these different shows. I hadn't seen you for like a few months, but I knew from Facebook that you had the surgery and that. And then the next time I saw you, I'm like, where's the rest of that guy? Where's the rest of Alex? So, yeah, I mean, you lost 170.
Yes.
That's equivalent to a little bit more than
Him and
me.
I.
Yeah. Gosh, ooh, okay. You said DM5?
DSM-5.
What's that? If you could just explain that real
I'm
quick.
not entirely sure what it stands for, but it's
Okay.
basically like a modern psychology breakdown. Like it's in book form. It talks about various types of mental disorders. And,
so kind of a psychology term.
yes.
Okay.
So if somebody is full of themselves, though they have narcissistic personality disorder, and it's just a whole big book of disorders, though.
Okay.
So yeah.
Because somebody had to write them down one day and just say, let's catalog what we think we have.
Basically.
Yeah. So,
So how, you do the stand-up comedy. How does the autism spectrum disorder feed into that or complement that for you? Or does it?
I'm not entirely sure. Whenever someone asks me, how is life different for you as somebody that has autism, I'm not quite sure how to really answer that.
Sure.
Because, this is the only life that I know,
Right,
So,
right.
Obviously, yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of how is this things different from you? It's I'm not entirely sure.
Yep,
But
because
then-
go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
but then when it comes to the stand-up comedy, though, it's I never really addressed being autistic on stage.
Sure.
The same as when I was really heavy, I never did fat jokes.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did not.
I never did fat
That's
jokes.
true. That's right.
Yeah, because
You have a strange sense of humor.
Yes.
Which is nice. I like that. But yeah, that was the one thing I did find interesting because a lot of times people tell the comics it's best to just be yourself.
Exactly.
So there's quite a few comics, if they are of heavy set, that's some of their material is based on that, but you never,
I never did that because my whole thing was when I go up on stage, is people knew that I was well over 400 pounds at my heaviest. And people expected a certain thing from me.
Right,
And
right.
I just refused to give it to them.
Okay.
So I decided to hit them at a different angle, though, even though some people would come up to me and later on go like, why don't you do fat jokes? I'm good on that.
Oh, yeah, because I always kind of in the back of my mind a little bit, but you had a unique style to you, which I thought that was good because you had that to you and
Oh, yeah.
and that.
So let's kind of talk about your journey, though.
Yes.
From you doing the shelter workshop work and
Yes.
discovering basically that I'm better than this. I can do more than this.
Well, that story actually goes back to about when I was about third grade-ish.
Yeah, start
Okay.
there. Yep.
Because
Please.
when I was growing up, though, I was kind of an odd kid. My brother's an odd kid. That's just how it was. And then at the time, I'm 33, so I was coming of age in the 90s.
Okay.
So at that time, though, my mom would take me into these doctors and what's wrong with this kid, basically.
Yeah.
And about third grade, I found out that I was diagnosed with Asperger's.
Okay.
But because, of course, when I was a little kid, I was like, Asperger's, It's like,
Third grade, you think it's funny because it's ass.
I thought it was like a food item, So
Right.
I was just really confused.
Yes.
So then,
Asparagus and Asperger's.
exactly,
Wait a minute.
it's like, I don't want to eat that.
Yeah.
So I got diagnosed with that, and then I started on what would become like a cocktail of meds. I got started on Ritalin, which turned into this, which turned into that, and this other combination of whatever. So then that went on from about third grade. I was in special ed here and there. I was for the most part mainstreamed. I would have a para every so often.
Sure.
And then when it gets to the point of getting the whole shelter workshop, adult foster care things,
Right.
Basically, my mom wanted to get married to this one individual. He didn't want to support a kid that wasn't his, that she wasn't getting child support for. So basically, it was like, let's get rid of Alex. It's easier to find a new house
really?
for 3 people than it is for 4
Really?
people. Yes.
Yeah.
So I got kicked out of the house before I got out of high school.
Oh, man.
How many other siblings did you have?
I have a younger brother.
And so you were kicked out?
Yes, I was kicked out. He had other kids though, but his youngest kid's a couple years older than me, so he was already out of the house. So basically, I got put into adult foster care, and I was there for 4 years. Before I turned 18, my mom was trying to make it so I wasn't my own guardian. And I wasn't quite sure what exactly that meant, but I just knew if I wasn't my own guardian, things would get really bad. I just knew it, so I had to put my foot down, and I'm like, this is not going to happen. And thankfully, I kept my guardianship. She also spent these savings bonds that were put away by my grandparents for my college, so she just emptied that out and all that sort of
did?
Oh,
yes. So that was another hurdle later on. So I was in adult foster care for 4 years. I lived in 2 different
Adult foster care.
adult foster care. That is another form of group home.
Okay.
It's basically
gotcha.
it's like a traditional family foster care. Instead of group home, how they have morning staff, evening staff, night staff. It's basically run by one person or a family of some sort.
Yep.
Okay.
So I lived in 2 different ones of these, and the people that were in these households, it's various, levels, some people were really autistic. Some of them were, doing certain things that aren't exactly legal, so it was a whole big whatever. And during that time, I went to a place called Transition Plus.
Okay.
Because technically speaking, I didn't get my high school diploma, even though I had the grades and everything like that. Because in this state, in Minnesota, you can be in special ed until you're 21, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
So it was a way that I could get in maybe 4 free semesters of DCTC, the local technical college. But they kind of set you up for failure because you can't start a class, before this time. You can't end a class before this time, after this time, and you don't really have much time to work on your projects. And most people don't have computers that they have access to at these adult foster cares. So then after you kind of get set up for failure on that, though, it kind of goes well, college just didn't work out for you. That's okay. Sheltered workshop. I kind of call that the short bus to sheltered workshop pipeline.
Okay.
Almost like with the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
So then I was in a sheltered workshop for about, I want to say about a year and a half. I was working for Surgeon One in Egan. Probably shouldn't name which one, but it was a certain one in Egan.
Right.
And I was getting paid sub-minimum wage.
Sure.
Basically, doing piecework. And I think,
But that's all the shelter. It's just not that company. That's
well,
all shelter.
that's all
workshops.
shelter
Yeah, yeah,
workshops. So then I ended up getting on Section 8 though, and I got my own apartment. And then from there, I was talking with one of my government workers, and they said, hey, you could probably go to college though, for little or nothing. And I'm like, oh, I could probably afford little or nothing. So then I enrolled in Normandale. I ended up graduating with honors.
Wow.
I got into Metropolitan State University. I graduated cum laude adjacent. For cum laude, you have to have like a 3.7 GPA. I had like a 3.69.
Oh,
that's close enough.
Yeah, as the kids say, nice.
Yeah.
I graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. During the time in Normandale, though, I had a real big fear of public speaking. I was in this class. It was an interpersonal communications class taught by.
And that was before comedy.
Before comedy,
Yep.
taught by a guy named Mike Wortman. So if you have to blame anybody for the stuff I do on stage, it's him.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm going to write that down. Okay.
So because of him, he was a miracle worker. And then the next semester, I was in one of my science class, and one of the women that was in my class turned out to be a server at the House of Comedy. And
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
ended up asking her, because I was there for my birthday, and I saw her, and she was like, oh, you're in my science class. I'm like, okay, cool. So then the next time in class, I said, how can I do this open mic? And she gave me Brody's email, and then I hit him up, and then like that April was my first time ever on stage.
Okay.
Back in 2012, I believe.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because that was just about the time that I started coming onto the scene, because I checked it out in 2009 and just kind of got the willies and put it off.
Yep.
And then right around that time is when I did that. The one thing I would like to ask you about is, because you said you had to fight for your guardianship.
Yes.
How did you know how to go about it? I mean,
Basically, what happened was my mom was telling me that if she didn't do this whole she didn't want to still be my guardian. She wanted some exterior force of some sort.
oh, she wanted you to have your own guardianship.
She wanted somebody else to be the guardian, whether it be
gotcha.
like a company or a different individual,
okay.
not her.
Somebody maybe court appointed or.
Something like that.
And that's why you said you wanted to be your
And
own.
basically what happened was I wasn't quite sure what that all meant, but I just knew it wasn't going to be good, because she kept threatening the whole, like, you're not going to live here anymore. You're not going to live here anymore. Is like, well, you have to understand, my mom is severely mentally ill.
Okay.
Has addiction problems.
Okay,
just
yeah.
she's a mess.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
So yeah, that's basically what was going on,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
So she was like talking about like signing legal documents. At the time, I wasn't quite sure what that all meant, though. But
Right.
it was just one of those things. Like, I knew things would get really bad if that didn't happen. I didn't have to go to court or whatever, but I did threaten to raise hell, and what that entails is just between myself and I. But nonetheless, though, it's like that's the only time like I threatened something to that degree.
Sure.
Yeah.
And because of that, I retained my own guardianship through this whole journey, though, because if I didn't, this whole journey of like going through the system and me getting out of it would have been a heck of a lot more difficult.
Sure.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this is just from grade school to like graduating college that I just discussed.
So you talked about, at the young age, you started on this whole cocktail of different medications.
Yes.
Have you been able to kind of escape that or change that to, one or two a day?
We're not
How does that
asking for
work?
dosages or anything.
Right.
Oh,
right.
yes.
Mark can always use the ADD med, so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I'm still on certain pills,
Right,
though.
yeah.
But once again, though, I can't remember all the concoctions, though. But I found a combination that works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it's for a while after I got out of adult foster care, I'm like, I can do this without the pills. But it's just one of those things, like while I was in college, though, it's like, it sure helps concentrating.
Absolutely.
It does.
Then,
Okay. Yeah.
So then I decided to just, get back on the pills and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, in my situation, I do take an antidepressant.
Yep.
And if I decide to try to get off it, my brain says, "Oh no, you can't do that."
Oh,
And so, you get back in the swing of it. And I imagine it's kind of like that with you. If you say, "I'm going to try to go without these for a few days," then your brain starts to say, "You really shouldn't have done that."
basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So then, when you went through, because you said Normandale,
Yes.
and then what was DC?
I was in DCTC while I was
That's Dakota?
in Dakota County
Dakota
Technical
County
College
Technical
in
College.
Rosemont. That was when I was in Transition Plus. I went there for about 4 semesters. Didn't do all that hot. And then after I got out of adult foster care, I got my own place. I ended up enrolling into Normandale Community College in Bloomington, and then I
Okay.
graduated from there into Metropolitan State University.
Oh, Metropolitan. Okay, and then when you were at like Normandale and Metro State and that, were you able to do it in kind of the same amount of time, or did you limit yourself to not as many classes because everyone has their load that they can handle in that then?
I've actually taken a pretty heavy load. It took me
So it
about
did- okay, cool.
It took me about 6 years to get a 4-year degree in this whole journey. But the issue wasn't necessarily about the load that I was taking, is because I was originally going into the medical field when I first went
right.
into
The typical
Normandale.
college student, yeah.
Yes. So
So
I was
into
go-
one, come out as another.
Basically, I went through this thing though, and then it was like, well, I was doing human anatomy, and it was really spelling heavy, and my spelling isn't all that great. So I
Okay.
took that class a couple times. I got a lot of those prereqs done, and then the school actually ended up not carrying my major anymore. So then it got to a point of like, well,
Now what do I
either
do?
I can do private schools or like public schools that are like 3 hours away,
Yeah.
or I can switch gears to something else. But I need to figure out something quickly because my FAFSA is running out quick.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
So you eventually, at Metropolitan State,
Yes.
were doing criminal justice.
Yes.
What led you to that?
Well, I looked at the the class schedule, the course list and whatnot. I was looking at basically like what sort of major has like a good job growth, and what major doesn't have an extra math requirement.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because like I can balance a checkbook just fine, but like college algebra is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So criminal justice, no extra math requirement. I'll do it. Sounds good, because I was actually thinking
Do I
of,
get
like,
a gun when I'm done?
God, they don't want to give me a gun. I don't want one. I was actually thinking about going into like possibly becoming a teacher or like early childhood development, because I'm actually pretty good with kids, surprisingly enough. But once again though, they're like, you need to take college algebra even if you're teaching 3rd grade for some reason.
really?
So so it's one of those things like, that's not going to happen. Criminal justice, sure. So that's how that happened.
Criminal justice, what kind of careers can someone get into from criminal justice?
It's kind of open-ended.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's pretty wide range, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, like if you want to get like an entry-level security gig, that's easy. But like things like a corrections officer, if you want to be a probation officer, or other things in that particular realm, though, that's a possibility. If you want to, in different states have different requirements to become a cop. Like I'm not qualified to be becoming a cop. I don't want to be a cop. But it's kind of open-ended. I mean, there were people in my class that were trying to become social workers and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So, so you took that degree, and did you apply to the field you're in now? What do you?
Well, I'm still applying to different careers in the county though, but it's just one of those things of like, will they hire me?
Sure.
And at this point, it's one of those deals of like, it's like, well, you need experience, but
Right, because you've been out just a short amount of time, I believe, correct?
about, what was it, early 2018,
Yeah,
2017, somewhere around
right,
there.
yeah, so, yeah.
But I've been working security pretty much since then, and short stint at one of the counties. But it's just one of those things of like, you need to have experience, but you can't get experience if nobody hires you, certain
Right.
things. So come back when you get experience somehow. So
Yeah, that's the favorite catch-22.
Oh, exactly.
We want you to be young, out of school, but have 20 years experience.
Exactly. I got turned down for internships because I didn't have enough probation experience, even though I was in school to become going into like probation, basically,
Right.
or trying to become a probation officer. I wasn't on probation, you know. So
Yeah. And then when you have applied or interviewed and things of that nature, do you bring up about your Asperger and that? It's always one of those tricky things whether or not to mention, because obviously for me and Charlie,
Yep.
Yeah.
we can't hide it unless we put a blanket around our wheelchair and people think we're it from the Adams family, but or I think Adams family, but do you bring that up?
no, I don't bring that up
Yeah, because there's no need to.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. There's no need to, because it doesn't hinder me from doing any types of jobs.
right.
Because I have enough going against me though. Because even though I've lost quite a bit of weight though, you can still see I'm a larger individual. So there's still a bit of discrimination in that thing though.
Yeah.
It's I don't necessarily want to give them more ammunition.
Yeah.
They
totally
don't expect you to be able to run down a shoplifter.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if they gave me a gun, I could probably take care of it, which is why they should not give me a gun.
Maybe a taser. How about that?
I'd probably end up tasing myself, to be quite honest. I'd be like, I don't think this thing really works, and all of a sudden I'll be twitching on the ground. So,
Yeah, you don't.
yeah. No.
Yeah, there's certain things you don't want to experience on your own.
Yep.
No. How many people? Because, like I said, we know one another from comedy. When have you let other people in the comedy family or that? Do they know of? They obviously know of the weight loss, but do they know the history that we were able to share today?
I'm not entirely sure. Basically, my coming out story, or for lack of a better term, was on the Filter Free America podcast that was hosted by Joey Vincent.
Who was another comedian?
Yes. I recorded that late 2019. I think it might have dropped early 2020, somewhere
Okay.
around there.
Okay.
And I was talking about my weight loss. I was talking about adult foster care and all that sort of thing in a long form segment. And because for the longest time, I didn't want to disclose this because of all the social stigma.
Right. Sure.
Because I actually avoided people with disabilities though for the longest time because of all the stigma though. It's I don't want to be classified this way. So if I saw somebody with autism though, it's I wasn't mean to them. I just walked the other way quickly. And then it got to a point of I got older, more mature, and I started realizing my fight isn't with these people. My fight is with the society that lets this sort of discrimination happen.
Certainly.
And I finally got to the point of even though I wasn't really comfortable of coming out on my own though, it was just one of those ideals of if people like me don't stand up and fight, this sort of abuse is just going to keep happening. And that's what led me to testifying at the Minnesota State Capitol early 2020 to end sub-minimum wage in the disabled community. That's what led to these two interviews with the Star Tribune reporter. That's what led to, after the first interview earlier this year or so, a journalism student from Columbia State University reached out to me to interview me for what turned into be his capstone paper, which he's pitching to other outlets right now.
Wow. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
And when you spoke at the Capitol, because I know in that article, it mentioned an individual by Noah McCord. Is
yes.
that where is he the one that got you to come down to the Capitol?
Yeah, Noah tagged me in. I actually met him through
explain a little bit if
Normandale.
you can just shortly what Noah does.
Okay, so Noah is also a disability advocate. Noah's big claim to fame was he was running for some sort of government thing in Waconia or whatever, and then his opponent tried using his disability against him. It became a big international news thing. He even addressed the UN in New York on some National Disability Day.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Okay.
It's cool.
Wow.
Okay.
It's a fascinating story.
Yes.
And we're happy that you did escape the sheltered workshop.
Yes.
and actually discovered that there is a real life out there for
Yep.
you. And, for that, we congratulate you.
Thank you.
Mark, I think we're
Just
about ready
real
to wrap
quickly,
it up
I was
here.
just saying, I know when you sent me this article on you, I thought you had sent it to me about someone, it was just because it was a disabled person, you sent it to me. And then I read it and I'm like, oh, it's about him. I
Yes.
had no clue whatsoever.
Yes.
So no, it was great to see the other side
Yep.
of you, Alex. So
So, all right. Want to thank Alex Jaffe for being with us today. My co-host Mark Knutson. I'm Charlie Burrows, and we're going to see you next time on Disability Landscape.